I want to start by figuring out how you got into character. I mean, because it's like it's like you can't go method, right?
No, you could.
You could.
You'd be slightly insane.
Yeah.
I guess you would just stay in a meat locker for days at a time and just kind of get frostbite. And but no, I got in this character by kind of getting in touch with my inner child. The character is the pure essence of innocence and joy, and he's what remains of these two girls at this pivotal moment in their lives when the future is ripe with endless possibilities, before they're kind of introduced to hardship. And he remains that child while they grow up. And that is kind of what inspired my choices for the character.
Because I understand that originally the character was skewing a little older, but when you found his voice, there was like, okay, no, it really needs to be about that childhood innocence.
Yeah, there was, I think that there was definitely, the character was kind of going through many different iterations before I came on board. But when I came on board, I went in and they wanted to do this test for animation purposes.
Yeah.
And so Jennifer Lee and Chris Buck, the co-directors, they said, let's just fool around today. None of this is going to be used, but let's just fool around and kind of make some discoveries. And they kind of let me just play around. Yeah. And we found it pretty quickly, and that test that we did that day is now the final version of Olaf's first scene in the movie.
Really?
So it was something that kind of, we all knew immediately when we hit on it that this was the right quality.
Now, you've done a lot of voice work. Did you find that voice originally? Because there's, again, it's like you've got a whole palette you could choose from.
Yeah, originally, I was involved in this project when it first came around, and it was called Anna and the Snow Queen, and it was a 2D animated movie, and at that time the character was completely different, the movie was completely different, and the choice that I made because of this, it was an even more pronounced buck tooth, if you can imagine, was we kept talking about a lisp, so he had almost like an Edwin kind of flavor to it, and those affectations seemed unnecessary in this final version of the script because the work that the screenwriters did, or that Jen did, was so pronounced that I didn't really need to add all the extra stuff to it.
Now you're a big fan of Charlie Chaplin.
Huge.
Growing up, right? So obviously you're in a voice booth, but how much kind of physicality do you use in your performance in the booth to bring this guy alive?
I'm sure if they ever released the footage of me in a recording studio, it would be very embarrassing because I flail around a lot and I do a lot of that stuff to just kind of get a sense of... There's so many moments in this film where Olaf has something happening to him, whether his head is coming off his body or he's becoming a part of a moving avalanche. I wanted to capture the spirit of that as much as I could, so there was definitely a lot of physicality that I was doing on my end that then the animators, I think, helped to utilize for the final animation of the character.
And what's it like having Kristen Bell as a partner as you're ad-libbing and trying all these...
Well, Kristen Bell and I, and in fact, all of the actors, never worked together during the making of this film.
Oh, no?
There was never one
of those
recording session where we ever got to be in the room together. So you're doing your lines quite literally in a bubble. And the final, cut of it, when you see it all together, it's, I'm sure, magical for the audience, but it's even more magical for the people involved because we're like, wow, how did they match what we were doing to what they're doing so that it feels so effortless, so that it really does feel like an organic conversation.
So she had one recording session and you had another one.
Yes.
They're not even wired together.
They're not wired together.
Wow.
In fact, you never even hear that during the process, during the making of.
Well, there really is some magic. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
this. Great stuff.
So good to see you.